The notification sound came through while I was in the bathroom at Le Bernardin, Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant, where my husband Marcus had just proposed we celebrate our 10th anniversary with his entire family. One ping, then another, then 5 more in rapid succession. I pulled out my phone and felt my stomach drop. Declined, insufficient funds. Declined, card inactive. Declined, account closed. Every single card, our joint account, my personal card, even the emergency Amex we kept for absolute crises. All declined within the same 3-minute window, while Marcus and I were toasting with his mother Beverly, his sister Claire, and her husband Devin at a table that cost more per person than most people's monthly grocery bills. I'm Jade, and before I tell you what I discovered that night, I need your honest answer. If your mother-in-law systematically destroyed your financial life to punish you for something you didn't even know you'd done, would you have burned it all down the way I did? Or am I the monster everyone says I am? Hold that answer, because by the end of this, I need you to tell me if I was justified or if I became exactly what she accused me of being. I walked back to the table with my phone clutched in my hand, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. Marcus was laughing at something his mother had said, his hand casually resting on the stem of his wine glass, completely oblivious to the financial apocalypse that had just detonated in our lives. Beverly caught my eye as I approached. She was wearing that Chanel suit she always wore when she wanted to remind everyone she had money, her perfectly styled silver hair catching the ambient lighting, her expression serene and satisfied in a way that made something cold slither down my spine. She knew. I could see it in the slight upturn of her lips, the way her fingers drummed once against the white tablecloth, the calculating gleam in her eyes that I'd learned to recognize over 10 years of marriage to her precious only son. She absolutely knew what was happening to our accounts, and she was savoring every second of my panic. The waiter arrived with our entrees, setting down plates that probably cost more than our electric bill. Marcus had ordered the halibut. I'd chosen the duck. His mother had selected the most expensive item on the menu because she always did. Some kind of elaborate tasting experience that came with wine pairings and required the sommelier to explain each course. I couldn't taste anything. My mouth was full of copper and fear. "Jade, darling, you look pale." Beverly's voice cut through my spiraling thoughts, sweet as poisoned honey. "Are you feeling well? You've barely touched your wine." Everyone at the table turned to look at me. Claire with her perpetual expression of mild disapproval, Devin with polite disinterest, and Marcus with genuine concern that made guilt twist in my chest because I knew what was coming. I knew the humiliation that was about to crash down on us, and I could see from Beverly's face that she'd orchestrated every second of it. "I'm fine," I managed, reaching for my wine glass with a hand that trembled slightly. "Just a bit of a headache." "Oh, you should have said something." Beverly leaned forward, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "We could have postponed this lovely celebration. After all, 10th anniversaries are so important. A decade of marriage, a decade of being part of our family." The way she emphasized our family made my skin crawl. Like I was still an outsider after 10 years. Like I'd been on probation this entire time and had somehow failed a test I didn't know I was taking. "I wouldn't dream of ruining tonight," I said, forcing a smile that felt like broken glass. "This restaurant is incredible. Thank you so much for suggesting it." "Well, Marcus did mention you two had been watching your budget lately." Beverly took a delicate sip of her wine. "I thought it would be nice to treat you both to something special, something you couldn't afford on your own." There it was, the subtle dig wrapped in generosity, the reminder that we needed her money her approval, her continued support of the lifestyle Marcus had grown up with and couldn't quite seem to live without. My phone buzzed again in my lap. Another notification. I glanced down quickly, shielding the screen from view. It was from our property management company. Payment for rent has been declined. Please update payment information immediately or late fees will apply. Our rent. Our $1,500 a month rent that I'd set up on autopay 3 years ago and never thought about again, because it always worked, it always went through. We always had enough in our joint account to cover it. Except now we didn't. Now we had nothing. Jade? Marcus touched my arm, his brown eyes worried. You sure you're okay? You look like you're about to be sick. I need to talk to you, I whispered, leaning close to him. Right now. It's urgent. Can it wait until after dinner? Mom went to so much trouble to arrange this. No, Marcus, it really can't. I stood up, my napkin falling from my lap to the floor. I'm so sorry, everyone. I'm not feeling well. Marcus, could you come with me for just a moment? Beverly's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Satisfaction. Anticipation. Like a cat watching a mouse realize it's been backed into a corner with no way out. Marcus followed me toward the restaurant's lobby, concern etched across his face, completely unaware that our entire financial infrastructure had just collapsed. I pulled him into the corridor near the bathrooms, where we had a semblance of privacy, though I could still hear the gentle murmur of expensive conversation and the delicate clink of silverware against bone china. What's going on? Are you actually sick? He reached for my forehead like he was checking for a fever, and I had to resist the urge to laugh hysterically, because a fever would have been so much simpler to fix than what was happening. Check your phone, I said, my voice tight. Check our bank accounts right now. He pulled out his phone with maddening slowness, his thumb moving across the screen with the casual confidence of someone who'd never once in his life worried about money. Marcus came from wealth, the kind of generational wealth where financial anxiety simply didn't exist, where overdrafts and declined cards were things that happened to other people. People like me who'd grown up counting pennies and working 3 jobs through college. His expression changed as he scrolled through notifications. Confusion first, then disbelief, then something approaching panic that I'd never seen on his face before. This doesn't make sense. These accounts have thousands in them. I just checked them last week. When's the last time you actually looked at the joint account? The one we use for rent and bills? I don't know. Maybe a month ago? You usually handle that stuff. His fingers moved frantically across the screen. Jade, it's showing a balance of $12. $12. That's impossible. Keep looking, I said, my voice hollow. Check your personal account, the one your mother set up for you when we got married. He did, and I watched the color drain from his face. It's closed. My account is closed. But that's my money. That's the trust fund disbursement from my grandfather's estate. There was $40,000 in that account. Was being the operative word? I held up my phone, showing him the cascade of declined transaction notifications. Every card, Marcus. Every single account. All in the last 15 minutes while we were sitting at that table with your family. This has to be a mistake. Some kind of bank error or fraud or... He stopped mid-sentence, and I could see the moment realization hit him because his entire body went rigid. She wouldn't. My mother wouldn't. Your mother is the only other person with access to your accounts. She's been a co-signer since you were 18. You told me it was just a formality, that she never actually touched anything, that it was just in case of emergencies. My voice was rising, despite my efforts to stay calm. This is the emergency, Marcus. She did this. She emptied our accounts and closed yours entirely. But why? What possible reason would she have? He looked genuinely bewildered, which would have been endearing if our entire lives weren't currently imploding. What did I miss? Did you two have a fight I don't know about? I thought back over the past few weeks, searching for the catalyst. Beverly and I had never been close, that was true. She'd made it clear from the moment Marcus brought me home that I wasn't quite what she'd envisioned for her son. I was too working class, too independent, too vocal about having my own career, instead of being content to live off Marcus's family money. But there'd been no specific incident, no blow-up argument, nothing that would warrant financial warfare. I don't know, I admitted. But Marcus, we need to deal with this right now. Our rent is due tomorrow. We have automatic payments set up for the car, for insurance, for everything. If those all bounce, we're looking at overdraft fees, late fees, our credit score tanking. Okay, let me think. He pressed his palms against his temples like he could somehow press a solution into existence. I'll call the bank first thing Monday morning. This has to be reversible. She can't just close my account without my permission, can she? She's a co-signer with full access. I looked it up while you were laughing at her jokes about my headache. The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. Legally, she can do whatever she wants with those accounts. And the joint account? She's not on that one, but I'm betting she convinced you to give her access at some point for some perfectly reasonable-sounding reason. Marcus's silence was answer enough. You did, didn't you? You gave her access to our joint account. She said it was just for emergencies, in case something happened to both of us and someone needed to access funds quickly. It made sense at the time. When was this? I don't know, maybe 2 years ago? Right after we bought the car. She said she wanted to be able to help if we ever got into financial trouble, and I thought it was sweet that she cared. Sweet. I laughed, a sharp, ugly sound that echoed in the marble corridor. Marcus, your mother just financially kneecapped us on our anniversary in the most expensive restaurant in the city, where we now can't pay for dinner. That's not sweet. That's calculated. We don't know for sure it was her. Maybe it really is fraud or... Then call her. Right now. Ask her to check her records, see if she notices anything unusual. See what she says. I crossed my arms, waiting. Marcus hesitated, his finger hovering over his mother's contact, and in that moment of hesitation, I understood something that made my chest ache. He was afraid. Not of being broke, not of the practical implications of what had happened, but of confronting his mother, of accusing her even by implication of doing something so vindictive. He was 35 years old and still terrified of disappointing Beverly. She's at dinner, he said finally. I can't just accuse her of emptying our accounts while we're supposed to be celebrating. So what do you suggest? We go back out there, finish our very expensive meal that we now have no way to pay for, and pretend everything is fine? Marcus's face went ashen as the full implication of our situation sank in. The bill. Oh God, Jade, how are we going to pay the bill? That's what you're worried about right now? Not the fact that we're financially ruined, not that your mother orchestrated this, but the embarrassment of a declined card at Le Bernardin? I could hear the hysteria creeping into my voice. Although you're right to be worried, because the meal we've already consumed probably costs close to $800, and that's before wine. I have cash. He pulled out his wallet with shaking hands and opened it to reveal 3 $20 bills. I have $60 cash. Perfect. That'll cover the tip if we're lucky. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to march back out to that table and confront Beverly in front of everyone, but years of social conditioning kept me rooted in place. You don't make scenes at places like Le Bernardin. You don't accuse wealthy mothers-in-law of financial sabotage while surrounded by Manhattan's elite. You smile and nod and die quietly inside like a civilized person. My phone rang, the sound jarringly loud in the quiet corridor. I glanced at the screen and felt my blood run cold. It was my boss, Linda, calling at 8:30 on a Friday night. "I need to take this," I told Marcus, swiping to answer. "Hello? Jade, I'm so sorry to bother you, but we have a situation." Linda's voice was tight with professional concern that barely masked something else. Pity, maybe. "Your corporate card was just declined for the hotel reservation in Chicago. The one for the client meeting Monday morning. I tried running it 3 times. That's impossible. I used that card last week for another booking with no issues." "Well, something's changed. The hotel called me directly since I'm listed as your supervisor. They said not only is the card declining, but when they tried to verify, they were told the account has been flagged for suspicious activity and frozen pending investigation." My vision narrowed to a pinpoint. Beverly hadn't just destroyed our personal finances. She'd somehow reached into my professional life too. How would that even happen? That's a company card issued by our firm. "I don't know, but Jade, this is a problem. A big one. Mr. Henshaw specifically chose you to handle the Cordovan account because of your attention to detail. If you can't even manage your own travel arrangements, he's going to question your competence on the actual project." "Linda, I swear to you, this is not my fault. Someone has sabotaged my accounts." Even as I said it, I knew how it sounded. Paranoid, delusional. The kind of excuse incompetent employees make when they drop the ball. "I believe you, but perception matters. Can you fix this by Monday?" "I'll handle it," I said, though I had no idea how. "The trip will happen as scheduled." I hung up and looked at Marcus, who'd been listening with growing horror. "She got my corporate card, too. How is that even possible?" "Maybe it's linked to your personal account somehow, for verification purposes?" He was grasping at straws, desperately trying to find an explanation that didn't involve his mother being a calculating monster. "Or maybe your mother has more reach than we thought. Maybe she has connections at the credit card companies or the banks. Maybe this isn't just about closing accounts. Maybe she's actively destroying my professional reputation." The pieces were clicking into place now, a pattern emerging that made perfect, terrible sense. "Marcus, 3 weeks ago, remember when your mother invited me to lunch? Just the 2 of us?" "Yeah, she said she wanted to get to know you better, that you'd been family for 10 years, but she felt like she didn't really understand you." Beverly had taken me to some trendy bistro in Soho, ordered expensive salads, and spent 2 hours asking pointed questions about my career, my ambitions, my plans for the future. At the time, I'd thought she was finally trying to bridge the gap between us, finally accepting me as more than just the woman who'd married her son. Now I realized she'd been gathering intelligence. She asked me about work, specifically about the Cordovan project. She asked what it would mean for my career if I landed it, what kind of promotion I was expecting, whether it might require relocation. Marcus's expression shifted from defensive to uncertain. "Okay, but that just sounds like normal conversation, like she was taking an interest." "She asked me if I thought you'd be okay with me potentially out-earning you, if I thought that might cause tension in our marriage." I watched his face carefully. "Did you ever tell her I was up for a promotion?" "Maybe. I don't remember specifically, but yeah, I probably mentioned it. She asks about you all the time." "What exactly does she ask?" "Just normal stuff. How you're doing, whether you're happy, if we're thinking about kids soon." He shifted uncomfortably. "She worries that you're always working, that you prioritize your career over family time." And what do you say when she expresses these concerns? My voice had gone very quiet, the kind of quiet that comes before an explosion. I tell her you're ambitious, that your work is important to you. I defend you, Jade. But there was something in his tone, a slight defensiveness that told me his support came with caveats, with subtle agreements that maybe Beverly had a point. Maybe I did work too much. Maybe I should think about slowing down and focusing on the things that really mattered, like giving Beverly grandchildren. When was the last time you and your mother had a private conversation about me? I don't know. We talk all the time. She's my mother. When, Marcus? Specifically. He thought about it, his brow furrowing. Last week, Tuesday, I think. She called while I was on my lunch break, asked if I wanted to grab coffee. We met for like 20 minutes. What did you talk about? Work stuff mostly. She asked about my projects, whether I was happy at the firm. He paused, and I could see him remembering, replaying the conversation in his mind. She asked if we'd given any more thought to moving back to Connecticut, buying a house closer to her. Said she'd been looking at properties, found some great options in our price range. Our price range, I repeated slowly. The price range that includes massive help from her, you mean? The price range where she'd have her hooks even deeper into our lives, where we'd be financially dependent on her for the mortgage down payment, where she'd have leverage over every decision we make. Marcus's jaw tightened. She's trying to help. That's what families do. They help each other. No, Marcus, that's what your family does. They help in ways that come with strings attached, with obligations, with the constant reminder that you owe them. My family helps by showing up when you need them and then stepping back to let you live your own life. Oh, here we go. The eternal class warfare speech. Your family's way is pure and noble, and mine is toxic and controlling. His voice rose slightly, echoing off the marble walls. You know what, Jade? Maybe my mother has a point. Maybe you are so obsessed with proving you don't need anyone's help that you can't see when someone genuinely cares. Genuinely cares? Marcus, your mother just destroyed our financial life on our anniversary. She waited until we were at the most expensive restaurant in the city, surrounded by your family, in a situation designed to maximize our humiliation. That's not care. That's punishment. I could feel tears building behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. What did I do? What did I do that was so terrible it warranted this? Nothing, he insisted, but his eyes slid away from mine. I don't know. You're reading too much into this. There has to be another explanation. Then help me find it, because from where I'm standing, the only person with motive, means, and opportunity is currently sitting at that table enjoying her 7-course tasting menu while we panic in the hallway. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from my best friend, Nicole. Hey, something weird happened. Your Venmo request from last week for my share of dinner just got returned with the note that your account is restricted. Everything okay? Oh, God! I showed the screen to Marcus. She got my Venmo too. Marcus, this isn't random fraud. Fraud doesn't hit every single financial account simultaneously. This is someone who knows exactly what they're doing. Someone who has detailed information about every aspect of our financial lives. But how would my mother even know about your Venmo? About your corporate card? Those aren't connected to any accounts she has access to. Unless she's been watching, monitoring. Maybe she got access to more than we realized. Maybe when you gave her emergency access to the joint account, there was fine print that gave her more permissions than you understood. I grabbed his phone from his hand. Let me see the banking app. Show me exactly what access your mother has. He unlocked it reluctantly and pulled up the account details. I scrolled through the authorized users section, and my stomach dropped. Marcus, she's not listed as a cosigner. She's listed as a primary account holder. The account is in her name with you as an authorized user, not the other way around. That can't be right. I opened that account when I was 18. And she was probably with you, and probably suggested putting it in her name initially for tax purposes or simplicity, or some reasonable-sounding explanation that made sense at the time. Marcus, you don't have your own bank account. You never have. You have access to your mother's account, which means she can do whatever she wants with it, including closing it, without asking you. The reality of how deeply Beverly had controlled his finances was clearly hitting Marcus for the first time. He'd grown up wealthy, with money simply appearing when needed, never questioning the mechanics of how it all worked. So, what do? We can't just stay in this hallway forever. We go back to the table, I said, making the decision. We finish dinner. We smile and nod and act like everything is fine. And when the bill comes, you're going to ask your mother to cover it because of the anniversary surprise she's been planning. What surprise? The one she's about to pretend she was planning all along when you tell her our cards aren't working. She'll play the generous benefactor, she'll pay the bill with a flourish, and she'll make sure everyone at that table knows she saved us from humiliation. Because that's the whole point of this, Marcus. The control. The reminder that we need her. He looked at me like I'd suggested we burn the restaurant down. I can't do that. I can't just manipulate her into paying. She manipulated us into being here in the first place. She knew our cards would decline. She's counting on this exact moment of panic, this exact scenario where we have to crawl back to her and beg. So we're going to beat her at her own game. We're going to act like this was always the plan, like of course she was treating us. How generous, how lovely, what a wonderful mother. And then what? We just accept that she's won? No. Then we go home and we burn her entire world to the ground. But we do it smart. We do it with lawyers and documentation and police reports if necessary. We don't do it in a public restaurant where she can paint us as ungrateful and dramatic. I straightened my shoulders, smoothed my dress, and put on the smile I used for difficult clients. Can you do this, Marcus? Can you go back out there and play the role for the next hour? He stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the war happening behind his eyes. His mother versus his wife. His lifelong conditioning versus the evidence in front of him. What if you're wrong? What if this really is just a massive coincidence or fraud? Then I'll apologize to your mother on my hands and knees and spend the rest of my life making it up to her. But Marcus, deep in your gut, what do you think happened here? Marcus didn't answer, which was answer enough. We walked back to the table in silence, and I could feel Beverly's eyes tracking our return like a predator, watching wounded prey limp back into view. Claire was mid-story about some vacation she and Devin were planning to Bali, something involving a private villa and a personal chef, the kind of casual extravagance that Marcus's family discussed over dinner, like other people talked about the weather. There you are, Beverly said warmly. We were beginning to worry. Jade, you're looking better. Some fresh air helped? Much better, thank you. I slid back into my seat and picked up my fork, forcing myself to take a bite of the now cold duck. It tasted like ash. Sorry for the interruption. Please, Claire, tell us more about Bali. Marcus sat down heavily beside me, and I could feel the tension radiating off him in waves. He picked up his wine glass and drained it in one long swallow, then immediately reached for the bottle to pour himself another. Beverly noticed. Of course she noticed. Easy there, darling. It's a celebration, not a competition. She laughed lightly, and everyone at the table joined in except me. I watched her instead, studying the woman I'd spent 10 years trying to please, trying to impress, trying to win over. She was beautiful in that carefully maintained way wealthy women achieve through expensive dermatologists and tasteful cosmetic procedures. 63 years old, but could pass for 50, with the kind of timeless elegance that came from never having to worry about money, never having to make hard choices, never having to sacrifice anything she wanted. She'd been widowed 5 years ago when Marcus's father had a heart attack on the golf course, and instead of grief diminishing her, she'd seemed to grow more powerful, more present, more involved in Marcus's life. At the time, I'd thought she was just lonely, that she needed her son to fill the void left by her husband's death. Now I wondered if she'd always been this controlling, and Marcus's father had just been better at running interference. "So, Marcus," Beverly said, setting down her wineglass with deliberate precision, "have you given any more thought to our conversation about the partnership opportunity at Sterling and Cross?" I felt Marcus stiffen beside me. "What partnership opportunity?" I asked, keeping my voice light despite the alarm bells shrieking in my head. "Oh, did Marcus not mention it?" Beverly's smile was pure innocence laced with poison. "Gregory Sterling is an old friend of the family. His firm is expanding, and he specifically asked about Marcus. It would be a significant step up from his current position. Better title, better compensation, better connections." "That's amazing," I said, looking at my husband. "When were you going to tell me about this?" I didn't think it was serious. Just mom networking, you know how she is. But his eyes wouldn't meet mine, and I understood with sudden clarity that he'd been seriously considering this opportunity, possibly had even applied, possibly had been moving forward with it without telling me. "The thing is," Beverly continued, her voice syrupy and conspiratorial, "the position is based in Connecticut, Greenwich specifically, right near our family home. It would be perfect timing for you two to make the move I've been suggesting. The firm even has a relocation package, though of course I'd help with the house down payment. I've already identified several properties that would be ideal for a young family." A young family? There it was. The real agenda. Move us to Connecticut, where Beverly could monitor and control every aspect of our lives, push us toward having children she could mold in her image, ensure that I was isolated from my friends and my career, and anything that gave me independence from her sphere of influence. "That's incredibly generous," I said, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. "But my career is here. The promotion I'm up for, the Cordovan project, all of that is based in Manhattan. I can't just relocate to Connecticut." "Oh, darling." Beverly reached across the table and patted my hand like I was a child who'd said something adorably naive. "I'm sure they have marketing firms in Connecticut. You're so talented, I'm certain you'd find something suitable. And really, at a certain point, don't you think you need to ask yourselves what matters more? Marcus's career trajectory and starting a family, or your current job?" "Her job is important to her, Mom." Marcus finally found his voice, though it came out weaker than I'd hoped. "She's worked really hard to get where she is." "Of course it's important, and I respect that. But Marcus has an opportunity here that could set him up for life. That could set your children up for life. Sometimes, we have to make sacrifices for the greater good of the family." I felt something snap inside me, some final thread of patience or propriety or fear. I'd spent 10 years making sacrifices for this family. I'd attended countless dinners where I was subtly insulted and talked over. I'd bitten my tongue through 100 passive-aggressive comments about my background, my clothes, my career choices. I'd smiled through Beverly's attempts to redecorate our apartment, to dictate how we spent our holidays, to insert herself into every major decision Marcus and I tried to make as a couple. And now she'd destroyed our finances, potentially sabotaged my career, and was sitting here talking about sacrifices while planning our entire future without our input. "Beverly," I said, my voice cutting through the ambient noise of the restaurant like a knife. Did you close Marcus's bank account today? The table went silent. Claire's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Devin looked up from his phone with sudden interest. Marcus made a small sound beside me, something between a protest and a prayer. Beverly didn't even have the grace to look surprised. I have no idea what you're talking about, dear. I think you do. I think you closed Marcus's account, emptied our joint account, and somehow flagged my corporate card and my Venmo for suspicious activity. All in the last hour. All while we've been sitting here celebrating our anniversary. I know what you're thinking right now. Some of you are nodding, thinking it's about time I confronted her. Others are judging me for making a scene at a nice restaurant, for not handling this privately. Drop a comment with your honest reaction. Team Jade or Team Beverly? Because I genuinely need to know if what I did next was justified or if I went too far. Beverly's expression shifted, the mask of maternal concern melting away to reveal something colder underneath. Jade, honey, I think you're not feeling well. Maybe we should call it a night. The stress of work has clearly gotten to you. Don't. My voice was low and dangerous. Don't you dare gaslight me right now. Marcus, show her. Show her the account balances. Marcus fumbled with his phone, his hands shaking as he pulled up the banking app. He turned the screen toward his mother, and I watched her eyes flick over the information with no surprise, no shock, just a mild acknowledgement that we'd figured out her game faster than she'd anticipated. Well, she said after a moment, sitting back in her chair with the kind of composure that came from a lifetime of controlling conversations. I can see why you're upset, but you're misunderstanding the situation. I didn't close anything. I merely exercised my legal rights as the primary account holder to protect family assets. Protect them from what? I demanded. From us? From your own son? From irresponsible decisions. Her voice hardened, the pretense of sweetness evaporating. Marcus, you called me last week and mentioned you and Jade were considering investing in some startup one of her colleagues was launching. $20,000 into a venture that has no track record, no proof of concept, no security. As someone who has a fiduciary responsibility to protect family wealth, I couldn't allow that. Marcus went pale. That was a private conversation. And we hadn't decided anything. We were just talking about possibilities. And I was just taking preventative action to ensure those possibilities didn't become catastrophic mistakes. She turned to me, and her expression was pure ice. Jade, I'm sure this is difficult for you to understand, coming from the background you do. But generational wealth requires careful stewardship. You can't just throw money at risky ventures because it sounds exciting. That money wasn't yours to steward, I said, my voice shaking with controlled fury. That was Marcus's inheritance from his grandfather. Money that was supposed to be his, free and clear. And it is his. It's simply being managed appropriately to prevent waste. When he demonstrates the financial maturity to handle it responsibly, access can be restored. She smiled then, a small, satisfied curve of her lips. Perhaps if you'd been a better influence on his decision-making, this wouldn't have been necessary. A better influence? I laughed, a harsh sound that made Claire wince. You mean more compliant? More willing to let you control every aspect of our lives? More willing to give up my career and move to Connecticut and have your grandchildren and become the perfect daughter-in-law who knows her place? I mean someone who understands what it means to be part of this family. Someone who puts family first instead of personal ambition. Someone who doesn't fill my son's head with ideas about risky investments and career changes and relocating away from the people who actually care about his well-being. Beverly leaned forward, her voice dropping to something almost intimate. Marcus needs stability, Jade. He needs guidance. His father and I spent years building a foundation for his future, and I won't stand by and watch you dismantle it because you have something to prove about your independence. Mom? Marcus's voice was barely above a whisper. Please stop. No, she's right to speak her mind. I stood up, my napkin falling to the floor. Let's put all the cards on the table, shall we? You've never liked me. From the moment Marcus brought me home, I wasn't good enough. Wrong background, wrong connections, wrong priorities. But he loved me anyway, and you've spent 10 years trying to fix that mistake. That's not true, Beverly said, but there was no conviction in it. I want you to know something. I planted my hands on the table, leaning toward her. Every sacrifice I've made for the last 10 years, every time I bit my tongue when you criticized me, every time I smiled through your passive-aggressive comments about my family, or my career, or my clothes, I did it because I loved Marcus. Because I thought eventually you'd see that I made him happy, that I was good for him, that I was worthy of being part of your precious family. Jade, please sit down, Marcus begged. People are staring. Let them stare. Let them hear this. Your mother just destroyed our financial lives as punishment for daring to make independent decisions. She closed accounts, flagged cards, and orchestrated this entire evening as some kind of twisted lesson in obedience. And you know what the really sad part is? I looked at Marcus, at the man I'd loved for 10 years, at the man who was even now more worried about making a scene than defending me. I thought you'd choose me. When push came to shove, I thought you'd finally stand up to her and choose our marriage over her control. But you won't, will you? That's not fair, he said, but his eyes were filling with tears. You're asking me to choose between my mother and my wife. No, Marcus. I'm asking you to be an adult, to recognize abuse when it's happening, to stand up for what's right instead of what's comfortable. I turned back to Beverly. You want to know what happens now? I'm walking out of this restaurant. I'm going home. And first thing, Monday morning, I'm filing a police report for financial fraud. Then I'm consulting with a lawyer about our options, which I'm betting include some interesting legal avenues since you fraudulently flagged my corporate card, which could constitute interference with my employment. Beverly's composure finally cracked, just slightly. You wouldn't dare. The legal fees alone would bankrupt you. Maybe, but I'd rather be broke and free than comfortable and controlled. And I think a judge might be very interested in hearing about a wealthy woman who systematically isolated her daughter-in-law, sabotaged her career, and stole from her own son. I picked up my purse and looked at Marcus one last time. When you decide what kind of man you want to be, you know where to find me. But I'm done begging for scraps of respect from people who've already decided I'm not worth it. I walked out of Le Bernardin with my head high and my heart shattering into pieces with every step, expecting Marcus to follow me, praying he'd follow me, giving him chance after chance with every elevator button press, every second waiting in the lobby, every moment standing on the street trying to hail a cab. He never came. I made it 3 blocks before the tears started, ugly crying on a Manhattan sidewalk at 9 o'clock on a Friday night, while couples walked past me toward their own anniversary dinners, their own celebrations, their own intact lives. My phone buzzed, a text from Marcus. Please come back. We can work this out. Mom didn't mean it the way it sounded. I didn't respond. Couldn't respond. Because what was there to say? That his mother absolutely meant every word? That he'd just chosen her over me in the most public, humiliating way possible? That 10 years of marriage had just ended over a dinner bill we couldn't pay? I went to Nicole's apartment because I had nowhere else to go. She opened the door in her pajamas, took one look at my face, and pulled me inside without a word. I told her everything, while she made tea I couldn't drink and offered tissues I soaked through by the dozen. "That woman is psychotic," Nicole said flatly when I finished. "Like, actually, clinically unwell. Who does that? Who orchestrates financial destruction as some kind of power play? Someone who's never faced consequences for anything in her life." I blew my nose, my head pounding from crying. Someone who's always gotten her way and genuinely believes she's entitled to control her adult son's existence. And Marcus? What's his damage? How does a grown man not stand up to that? She raised him to think this is normal, that mothers are supposed to be involved in every decision, that family money comes with family strings, that questioning her is the same as betraying her. He's never known anything different. Nicole shook her head. "You can't go back to that, Jade. Even if he apologizes, even if he grovels, you can't go back into a marriage where his mother has veto power over your entire life." I know. And I did know, intellectually. But my heart was still back at that restaurant, still waiting for Marcus to choose me, still hoping 10 years meant more than a lifetime of conditioning. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Text after text from Marcus, from Claire, even from Devin, who'd never sent me a message before in his life. I scrolled through them with a kind of detached fascination. From Marcus, "Mom left. She was crying. She said you humiliated her in front of the entire restaurant." "Claire is furious. She said you ruined what was supposed to be a nice family evening. I paid the bill with money I borrowed from Devin. We look like idiots now. Please call me. We need to talk like adults." From Claire, "I always knew you were trouble for my brother. You couldn't just be grateful for everything Mom does for you. You had to make it about your ego." From Devin, "Hey, I don't really know you that well, but that was pretty harsh back there. Beverly was just trying to help. Maybe cool off and apologize." The audacity of these people. The sheer, breathtaking audacity of painting me as the villain when Beverly had committed what was essentially financial assault. But that was how it worked in families like Marcus's. The matriarch was always right. The outsider was always wrong. And questioning the family hierarchy was the real crime. "Don't respond," Nicole warned, watching me scroll. "Not tonight, not while you're emotional. Wait until you've slept and can think clearly." But I was thinking clearly for the first time in years. I opened my email and started a new message to Linda, my boss. "Linda, I apologize for the issues with the corporate card tonight. I'm currently dealing with a family emergency that has resulted in identity theft and fraudulent account activity. I've filed a police report." I paused, then actually did file a police report online, documenting everything, taking screenshots of the declined transactions, the closed accounts, the timeline of events. And I'm working with my bank to resolve the situation. I will personally cover the Chicago hotel reservation with my own funds and submit for reimbursement once this is resolved. The client meeting will proceed as scheduled without any disruption. Thank you for your patience and understanding during this difficult time. It was past midnight when I finished documenting everything, creating a paper trail that would hopefully protect my job and possibly help with whatever legal action I decided to pursue. Nicole had fallen asleep on the couch, her hand still holding her phone like she was standing guard against any middle-of-the-night crisis. I sat on her balcony and watched the city lights, thinking about the life I'd built here, the career I'd fought for, the friendships I'd cultivated, the independence I'd maintained, despite 10 years of subtle pressure to give it all up and become whoever Beverly wanted me to be. Marcus called at 1 a.m. I almost didn't answer, but some masochistic part of me needed to hear what he'd say, what excuse he'd manufacture, what reality he'd try to construct where this was somehow my fault. "Jade." His voice was thick, like he'd been crying or drinking or both. Please come home. What home, Marcus? The apartment we can't afford because your mother destroyed our finances? The life we can't maintain because I'm apparently too ambitious and independent? Which home am I supposed to come back to? This isn't fair. You're acting like I did something wrong when I'm just trying to keep the peace. Keep the peace? I laughed, a broken sound. Marcus, there is no peace. There's capitulation and control, and the appearance of harmony built on me constantly sacrificing what I need, so your mother gets what she wants. That's not peace. That's surrender. She's my mother. I can't just cut her out of my life because you two don't get along. She emptied our bank accounts, Marcus. She closed your inheritance account. She sabotaged my corporate card and potentially my job. This isn't about not getting along. This is about her committing actual crimes because she's mad we made a decision without asking her permission first. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear traffic in the background, the muffled sounds of the city at night. Where are you? I asked. Walking. Just walking. I couldn't go back to the apartment. Every time I look at it, I see the future Mom has planned for us in Connecticut, and I realize maybe she's right. Maybe we do need more structure, more guidance, more stability than what we have here. More control, you mean? Marcus, listen to yourself. You're a 35-year-old man with a successful career, and you're seriously considering letting your mother dictate where you live, where you work, how you spend your money, probably eventually how you raise your kids. Does that sound healthy to you? It sounds safe. It sounds like family. It sounds better than whatever this is, with you accusing her of crimes and threatening lawyers and destroying relationships that took a lifetime to build. She destroyed our relationship tonight, not me. The moment she chose to punish us financially instead of having an adult conversation about her concerns, she destroyed any trust or respect I had left for her. And you're letting her. I took a breath, steadying myself. Marcus, I need you to hear me clearly. I love you. I've loved you for 10 years. I've built my entire adult life around you. But I won't live like this. I won't live in a marriage where your mother has more power than I do, where my needs and my career and my autonomy are always secondary to keeping her happy. So, what are you saying? His voice cracked. Are you leaving me? I'm saying you need to decide what kind of marriage you want. Do you want a partnership where we make decisions together, where we're equals, where we support each other's dreams, even when they're inconvenient? Or do you want to be your mother's son for the rest of your life, following her script, living in her shadow, letting her veto anything she doesn't approve of? That's not fair. You're making it black and white when it's more complicated than that. It really isn't, Marcus. Either we're a team or we're not. Either you see what she did tonight as the deal breaker it is, or you make excuses for her. There's no middle ground here. I need time to think. Take all the time you need, but while you're thinking, I want you to ask yourself something. In all the years we've been together, how many times have I asked you to choose? How many ultimatums have I given you? How many times have I made you pick between me and your family? He was quiet. Never. You've never done that. Exactly. Because I'm not the controlling one in this scenario, Marcus. I'm the one who's been compromising and adapting and bending for a decade. But your mother crossed a line tonight that can't be uncrossed. She weaponized money to punish us, and if you can't see that as abuse, then we have nothing left to talk about. I hung up before he could respond, before he could launch into another round of justifications and false equivalencies. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped the phone. Nicole appeared in the doorway, bleary-eyed. You okay? No, but I will be. I hoped that was true. The weekend passed in a blur of legal research, bank disputes, and frantic calls to credit card companies trying to undo the damage Beverly had done. By Monday morning, I'd managed to get my Venmo restored and my corporate card unflagged by providing extensive documentation of identity theft. The joint account was trickier because Beverly technically had legal access, but I filed disputes claiming financial abuse and fraud. Marcus's inheritance account was the biggest problem because it genuinely was in Beverly's name with him as an authorized user, which meant legally she could do whatever she wanted with it. A lawyer I consulted over the phone said I'd have a case for constructive fraud, arguing that the account was set up with the understanding it was Marcus's money being held in trust, but it would be expensive and time-consuming and would definitely burn any remaining bridges with the family. Do it, I told the lawyer. File whatever needs to be filed. I want every legal option explored. Marcus had texted twice over the weekend, both messages variations of, "We need to talk," that I'd ignored. Claire had called once, and when I didn't answer, she'd left a voicemail that I deleted without listening to. Beverly herself had sent nothing, which was somehow more ominous than if she'd been blowing up my phone. On Monday afternoon, while I was in Chicago successfully closing the Cordovan deal despite everything, I got an email from a law firm I didn't recognize. Dear Mrs. Whitlock, we represent Beverly Callahan Whitlock in matters related to family disputes and asset management. It has come to our attention that you have made serious and defamatory allegations against our client, including claims of financial fraud and abuse. These allegations are not only false, but constitute libel and emotional distress. We are prepared to pursue legal action unless you immediately cease all accusations, withdraw any police reports or fraud claims, and issue a formal written apology to Mrs. Callahan Whitlock. Furthermore, we must inform you that the accounts in question are legally owned by our client, and any attempts to claim otherwise constitute fraud on your part. We strongly advise you to retain legal counsel, as we will be pursuing all available remedies to protect our client's reputation and interests. Regards, Mitchell & Stone, LLP. I read the email 3 times, feeling rage and fear war for dominance in my chest. She was threatening to sue me for defamation for telling the truth. She was using her wealth and her lawyers to intimidate me into silence. She was painting herself as the victim while simultaneously proving every accusation I'd made about her being controlling and abusive. I forwarded the email to my own lawyer with a simple note. She just escalated. What are my options? The response came back within an hour. This is a bullying tactic. The defamation claims are baseless. Truth is an absolute defense. However, fighting this will be expensive. We need to discuss your financial capacity to engage in prolonged litigation. My financial capacity was currently about $1,500 in my personal savings account and whatever I could borrow from friends. Beverly, meanwhile, had millions and a legal team on retainer. Tuesday morning, I woke up in Nicole's guest room to 7 missed calls from Marcus and a text that made my blood run cold. Mom is in the hospital, heart attack. You need to come now. I called him immediately, my hands shaking despite everything, because whatever else Beverly was, she was still Marcus's mother, and he was still the man I'd loved for 10 years. What happened? I asked when he answered. Last night, around midnight, she collapsed at home. They said it was stress-induced, that her blood pressure had been dangerously high. Claire blamed me, said the stress of our fight caused it. Jade, I don't know what to do. His voice broke completely. She might die, and the last thing I said to her was that I needed time to think about our relationship. What hospital? I was already getting dressed, already planning logistics, already falling into the familiar role of supporting Marcus through crisis, even though every rational part of my brain was screaming that this might be another manipulation. Mount Sinai. But Jade, Claire said if you show up, she'll call security. She's convinced you're the reason this happened. I don't care what Claire thinks. I'm coming because you need support, not because I owe Beverly anything. The hospital was chaos. The Callahan-Whitlock family in crisis was apparently newsworthy enough that there were photographers outside, society page reporters trying to get statements, the whole circus that surrounded wealthy people when tragedy struck. I found Marcus in a waiting room, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him, his expensive suit rumpled, his eyes red from crying. Claire was there too, and she stood up the moment she saw me. You have some nerve showing up here. You did this. Your accusations, your drama, your vindictive behavior gave our mother a heart attack. Claire, that's not how heart attacks work. I tried to keep my voice calm. Stress can be a factor, but it's usually underlying conditions that... Don't you dare lecture me about medical conditions. You're not a doctor. You're just a gold digger who couldn't handle being part of a real family. She stepped toward me, and for a moment I thought she might actually hit me. My mother has been nothing but generous to you for 10 years, and you repaid her by accusing her of crimes and hiring lawyers and filing police reports like some kind of common criminal. Your mother emptied our bank accounts as punishment for having independent thoughts. That's not generosity, Claire. That's abuse. She was protecting family assets from your terrible financial decisions, from your influence on Marcus, from your constant pushing for him to distance himself from the people who actually care about him. I never asked Marcus to distance himself from anyone. I asked him to stand up to abuse. There's a difference. Marcus finally found his voice. Both of you, stop. Our mother is in surgery right now. They said the next few hours are critical. Can we please not do this here? But Claire wasn't done. You know what I think? I think you planned this whole thing. You saw an opportunity to isolate Marcus from his family, to paint his mother as some kind of villain, to position yourself as the victim so you could manipulate him into choosing you over us. And now, look what's happened. She might die. Marcus might lose his mother, and it's all because you couldn't just be grateful for what you had. Grateful. The word tasted like poison. I was supposed to be grateful that your mother controlled every aspect of our finances? Grateful that she sabotaged my career? Grateful that she tried to force us to move to Connecticut and give up the lives we'd built? Yes, you should have been grateful. Do you know how many women would kill to have a mother-in-law who cared enough to be involved, who had the resources to help, who wanted to make sure her son's future was secure? But you couldn't see it, because you're so obsessed with proving you don't need anyone. I'm obsessed with being treated like an adult instead of a child who needs constant supervision. My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. I'm obsessed with having agency over my own life. I'm obsessed with not having to ask permission from my husband's mother before making decisions about my career or my home or my future. Enough. Marcus stood up, his voice cutting through our argument. Both of you, just stop. I can't take this right now. Mom is in surgery, and you're screaming at each other in a hospital waiting room. Have some respect. Respect? Claire turned on him. Where was Jade's respect when she walked out of a family dinner? When she accused Mom of fraud? When she filed police reports that caused so much stress it literally gave her a heart attack? Beverly caused the stress herself, I said quietly, by committing fraud, by trying to control people she has no right to control. Whatever happens to her, that's a consequence of her own choices, not mine. A doctor appeared in the doorway, and we all froze. Family of Beverly Callahan-Whitlock? That's us, Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. How is she? She's stable. The surgery went well. We repaired the blockage, and she's in recovery now. The next 24 hours will be critical, but I'm cautiously optimistic. The relief on Marcus's face was so profound, I felt it in my own chest, despite everything. Whatever Beverly had done, I didn't want her dead. I just wanted her out of our lives. "Can we see her?" Claire asked. "Not yet. She needs rest. Maybe in a few hours, immediate family only, one at a time." The doctor looked at me. "Are you immediate family?" "She's my wife," Marcus said before I could answer. "She's family." Claire made a disgusted sound. "For now." The implications of those two words hung in the air like a threat. After the doctor left, we sat in awkward silence. I wanted to leave, to escape back to Nicole's apartment and the relative safety of distance from this family and their drama. But Marcus reached for my hand, gripping it like I was the only solid thing in a world that had suddenly become unstable. "Thank you for coming," he whispered. "I know you didn't have to." "Of course I came. I'm your wife. That doesn't just disappear because we're fighting." But even as I said it, I wondered if it was true. Could a marriage survive what we'd been through? Could love overcome this level of dysfunction and manipulation and family toxicity? "I've been thinking," Marcus said, his voice low enough that Claire couldn't hear from where she'd moved to the window. "About what you said, about choosing, about what kind of man I want to be. And I don't have an answer yet. But sitting here, thinking about losing Mom, I realized something. I'm terrified of her dying, but I'm also terrified of losing you. And the fact that those two fears are in competition, that I can't figure out how to keep both of you in my life, that tells me something is really broken here." It was the most honest thing he'd said in days, maybe in years. "I don't want you to lose your mother, Marcus. I just want her to stop trying to run our lives. Is that really too much to ask?" "For her? Probably yes. Control is how she shows love. It's all she knows." "Then she needs to learn something different, because I can't live like this. I won't." Before he could respond, my phone rang. It was my lawyer. "I need to take this," I told Marcus, stepping into the hallway. "Jade, we have a problem. Beverly's lawyers filed an emergency restraining order claiming you've been harassing their client and causing intentional emotional distress. There's a hearing scheduled for Thursday. If the judge grants it, you won't be able to contact Marcus or go within 500 feet of any Callahan Whitlock family member. She's in the hospital with a heart attack. How is she filing restraining orders? Her lawyers are doing it on her behalf, claiming she's in fear for her safety and health due to your continued accusations. It's aggressive and probably won't hold up. But in the meantime, you need to be very careful about any contact with the family." I looked back through the waiting room window at Marcus, at the man I'd married, at the life I'd built that was crumbling around me. "Understood. I'll be there Thursday." So, here we are. Me facing a restraining order, Beverly in a hospital bed playing victim while wielding the legal system like a weapon. Marcus caught in the middle, unable or unwilling to choose a side, and a decade of marriage hanging by a thread. I need your verdict. Was I right to stand up to Beverly's financial abuse, even if it caused this level of chaos? Should I have just kept quiet and gone along with her control to keep the peace? Am I the villain in this story or the victim? Drop your honest judgment in the comments. Team Jade or Team Beverly? And if you've got similar family drama, tell me how you handled it, because I genuinely don't know what to do next. Next week, I'll tell you about my sister Maya's confession about why she stopped speaking to our entire family for 3 years and what she discovered about our parents that changed everything. If you want more stories like this, real confessions from real people dealing with impossible situations, hit subscribe. We're all just trying to figure out if we're the heroes or the villains in our own lives, and sometimes The only way to know is to tell the truth and let others judge.